Lakewood police are just now talking publicly about a pregnant woman who was ambushed and killed a year ago.
9 News reporter Brianna Clark is live in Lakewood tonight. Brianna, police are just now saying they're making progress as well.
Yeah, we're actually here in the neighborhood where it happened. It's near the intersection of Wadsworth and Florida. It's residential here. We have apartments and homes on this block. And actually where we're standing right now at the end of Zephyr Street, right before the light rail, you can see a makeshift memorial over my shoulder to remember the woman who was killed here. And it's been nearly a year since that night, February 28th, 2023. Police say 21-year-old Melanie Massay and her unborn child were killed during an ambush by multiple suspects. Lakewood police said 7 people are now charged with first-degree murder in connection to Melanie's death.
I'm so scared. I feel like I'm going to die. These were the last words Melanie Massay texted before she was ambushed outside her Lakewood home on a cold February afternoon. The 21-year-old mother was 4 months pregnant with twins when multiple gunshots shattered the quiet neighborhood. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. If you're new to our channel, hit that subscribe button now. We investigate cases that reveal the darkest aspects of human behavior, not for sensationalism, but to understand the warning signs that might prevent future tragedies. What makes this case particularly chilling isn't just the brutality of the attack. It's who pulled the triggers. As Melanie's mother, Chautauqua Brown, would later reveal through tears, "I fed these children. My daughter housed one that was homeless." The people who allegedly plotted to kill Melanie weren't strangers lurking in the shadows. They were faces she recognized, voices she knew, people she had helped when they needed it most. But something had changed. A Facebook dispute escalated into threats. Threats escalated into an ambush, and as Melanie was dropped off at her home on Zephyr Street, 7 people were waiting for her. She managed to fire 1 defensive shot before being overwhelmed. 1 bullet against an arsenal. 1 woman against 7 attackers. What could drive 7 people to allegedly conspire against a pregnant woman who had shown them nothing but kindness? And how did authorities finally track down the last suspect after a 2-year manhunt? The answer reveals a darkness in human nature that's more terrifying than any stranger danger. Melanie Massay was a 21-year-old woman living in Lakewood, Colorado, whose life was cut tragically short in February 2023. At the time of her death, she was pregnant with twins, adding another devastating dimension to this already heartbreaking case. According to her mother, Chautauqua Brown, Melanie already had a 3-year-old daughter, making her death all the more tragic as it left a young child without her mother. She was a very good girl. She had just graduated and was working at a living assisted home for elderly people, Brown shared when speaking about her daughter. This glimpse into Melanie's life reveals a young woman who had chosen a path of service, dedicating her working hours to caring for some of society's most vulnerable members. The relationship between Melanie and her mother appears to have been exceptionally close. In the aftermath of the murder, Chautauqua Brown has been relentless in her pursuit of justice, speaking publicly about her daughter despite her personal discomfort with attention. "I don't like publicity, I don't like attention, but for my daughter, it's okay to have the attention. It's okay to let people know how I truly feel. It's okay to show my faith," Brown explained, demonstrating the depth of her love and commitment to honoring Melanie's memory. Those who knew Melanie described her as exceptionally kind-hearted. "She was a sweethearted person," Brown said of her daughter. "She was such a bright young lady, outgoing and very independent." This generosity of spirit extended beyond words. Melanie was known to take concrete actions to help those around her. According to her mother, she had her mind right and would give the shirt off her back to help others. Perhaps most telling about Melanie's character was how she treated the very people who would ultimately betray her. "My daughter housed one that was homeless," Brown revealed, referring to one of the 7 individuals later charged in connection with her murder. This act of kindness towards someone in need paints a picture of a young woman whose compassion would be repaid with unimaginable violence. The aftermath of Melanie's murder has been particularly difficult for her young daughter, who now faces growing up without her mother. She has a daughter now that's dealing with depression because of what you did, Brown said, addressing her daughter's killers. She has a mother here now that you destroyed. In remembrance of her daughter, Brown created a memorial filled with flowers and a pink heart. Melanie liked pink, she explained, carrying her daughter's ashes with her everywhere she goes, a mother's way of keeping her child close, even after death. February 28, 2023 began like any other day in Lakewood, Colorado. The 1300 block of Zephyr Street, a residential area near the intersection of Wadsworth and Florida, was quiet that morning. Neighbors went about their routines, unaware that by early afternoon, their community would become the scene of a horrific crime that would shock the entire region. The day before, Melanie Massay had expressed growing fear through text messages on her phone. "I'm so scared. I feel like I'm going to die," she wrote repeatedly, as if sensing the danger that loomed. According to her mother, Chautauqua Brown, these messages revealed Melanie's mounting anxiety about threats she had received. What had begun as a dispute on Facebook had escalated into something far more dangerous. "There was a Facebook dispute involving the suspects threatening my daughter," Brown later told reporters. "These weren't empty threats from strangers. They came from people Melanie had once trusted, people she considered friends. One was even a childhood friend she used to hang out with all the time." At approximately 1:30 p.m., Melanie was dropped off at her home on Zephyr Street. Police reports indicate that moments after her arrival, 7 individuals converged on the location in what investigators would later describe as a coordinated ambush attack. The peaceful afternoon was shattered by the sound of gunfire. According to witness statements and evidence gathered at the scene, Melanie wasn't alone when the attack occurred. An adult male companion was with her, though his identity has been protected in public reports. As bullets flew, Melanie was struck in the back of the head and leg. Despite the sudden and overwhelming nature of the attack, she managed to defend herself. "Melanie shot that one bullet," her mother later recounted, a detail that speaks to her daughter's courage in her final moments. "One of the guys actually had 2 guns and ambushed my daughter, just shot my daughter to death." The male victim was shot in the back, but survived his injuries. Melanie, 4 months pregnant with twins, was not as fortunate. Both she and her unborn children died at the scene. The sound of gunshots prompted immediate calls to emergency services. Lakewood police officers responded to reports of gunshot victims around 1:30 p.m. By the time they arrived, the perpetrators had fled, leaving behind a devastating scene. As news of the shooting spread, Chautauqua Brown rushed to the location, desperate to reach her daughter. What she encountered was a parent's worst nightmare. "It was police everywhere. It was so many cars," Brown later described, her voice breaking with emotion. "I couldn't get up here if I wanted to." Cordoned off by police tape, the area had been secured as a crime scene. Brown stood helplessly at the perimeter, unable to reach her child in those critical moments. "But what I did see is them bring her out in a body bag," she recalled. "I couldn't get to her." In that moment, watching from behind police lines as her daughter's body was removed from the scene, Brown's world changed forever. The young woman she had raised, who had just graduated and was working at an assisted living home for elderly people, who was expecting twins and already raising a 3-year-old daughter, was gone. The makeshift memorial that would later mark the spot where Melanie fell began with Brown's first visit back to the scene. "My daughter's body was right here," she said, pointing to a spot on Zephyr Street. "You can still see blood drops from my child being slain." The investigation into Melanie Massay's murder began immediately after the February 28, 2023 shooting on Zephyr Street. The crime scene told a story of violence that shocked even veteran officers. Shell casings littered the ground, indicating multiple shots had been fired. Investigators meticulously documented the scene, collecting bullet casings, taking photographs, and searching for any surveillance footage that might have captured the attack or the suspects fleeing the area. One critical piece of evidence was the single bullet Melanie had managed to fire in self-defense before being overwhelmed by her attackers. This was not a random act of violence, a Lakewood police spokesperson would later state. The evidence pointed to a coordinated ambush involving multiple perpetrators who specifically targeted the victim. The complexity of the case became immediately apparent. Unlike cases with a single perpetrator, this investigation required detectives to piece together the movements, communications, and relationships of multiple suspects. They began by examining Melanie's phone, where they discovered disturbing messages documenting her fear. In her phone, she kept saying, "I'm so scared, I feel like I'm going to die," Chautauqua Brown later revealed. These messages, sent just one day before the murder, would prove crucial in establishing the premeditated nature of the attack. Social media provided another vital investigative avenue. Detectives uncovered a Facebook dispute where threats had been made against Melanie. These digital breadcrumbs, combined with witness statements and physical evidence, gradually led investigators to identify 7 suspects in connection with the ambush: Monty Hayes, Ray Asha Hollins, Trinity Walker, Dejana Abrams, Jayla Taylor, Jalea Burks, and Isaac Amir Piri. What do you think motivated these 7 individuals to target a pregnant woman? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you're finding this case as disturbing as I am, please consider subscribing to Shadows of Crime for more in-depth coverage of cases that demand our attention. As the investigation progressed, perhaps the most shocking revelation wasn't just the number of people involved in the attack, but their relationship to Melanie. These weren't strangers who had targeted her at random. These were people she knew, people she considered friends, people she had helped in their time of need. This betrayal would add another layer of complexity to an already challenging investigation, raising disturbing questions about the nature of friendship, loyalty, and the capacity for violence that can hide behind familiar faces. As detectives dug deeper into these relationships, they would uncover a web of jealousy, resentment, and calculated malice that would ultimately lead to arrests, but not before a lengthy manhunt that would span more than 2 years. In the annals of true crime, few elements disturb us more profoundly than betrayal. When strangers commit violence, we can distance ourselves with the comfort that evil came from outside our circle of trust. But when those we welcome into our lives, those we help and care for, turn against us, the violation cuts deeper than any physical wound. For Melanie Massay, this betrayal came from not 1, but 7 people she considered friends. The investigation revealed that Melanie had opened her home and heart to these individuals. She had shared meals with them. She had offered shelter to one who had nowhere else to go. In a cruel twist that defies understanding, these same people, Monty Hayes, Reasia Hollins, Trinity Walker, Dejana Abrams, Jayla Taylor, Jalea Burks, and Isaac Amir Piri, allegedly conspired to end her life. One of the accused was a childhood friend that Melanie used to hang out with all the time, according to her mother. These weren't casual acquaintances, but people embedded in her life, people she trusted, people who knew she was carrying twins, people who had witnessed her kindness firsthand. The premeditation aspect of this case is particularly chilling. This wasn't a spontaneous act born from a heated argument. Evidence suggests the attack was carefully planned.
This is me, Melanie, and Honesty together.
3 generations in one photo.
She just loved for us to dress up alike.
Memories help numb the pain for Chautauqua Brown.
And I miss those moments.
This spot brings her back to reality.
My daughter's body was right here. You can still see blood drops from my child being slain.
February 28th, 2023.
There was bullets everywhere.
This is where 21-year-old Melanie Massay took her last breath.
It was police everywhere. It was so many cars. I couldn't get up here if I wanted to. But what I did see is them bring her out in a body bag. I couldn't get to her.
Lakewood police say Melanie was shot and killed during an ambush.
Not understanding what made 7 people want to come over here and just shoot my pregnant daughter.
Melanie was going to be a mother again.
She was pregnant with twins.
Grandbabies Chautauqua will never get to meet or make memories with.
I'm a hurting mother.
The Facebook dispute that preceded the murder showed escalating threats against Melanie. Then, on February 28, 2023, the plan was executed with calculated precision. When Melanie was dropped off at her home on Zephyr Street, the group was waiting. One of the attackers reportedly carried 2 guns to the ambush. Despite Melanie's attempt to defend herself, firing a single shot, she was overwhelmed by the coordinated attack, shot multiple times, including in the back of the head and leg. What happens psychologically when a group decides to commit violence together? Experts in group dynamics point to several disturbing phenomena. First, there's diffusion of responsibility. Each person feels less accountable for the outcome because responsibility is spread across multiple individuals. Second, there's de-individuation, the loss of self-awareness and evaluation apprehension that occurs in group situations. People do things in groups they would never do alone. Third, there's group polarization. When like-minded individuals discuss a topic, their opinions often become more extreme. These psychological factors help explain how 7 individuals could participate in such a horrific act. But they don't excuse it, and they don't diminish the particular horror of targeting a pregnant woman. Melanie was 4 months pregnant with twins when she was killed. Her pregnancy wasn't a secret to the perpetrators. They knew they were taking not just 1 life, but 3. They knew they were robbing a 3-year-old girl of her mother and siblings. They knew they were destroying a family. She has a daughter now that's dealing with depression because of what you did, Chautauqua Brown said, addressing her daughter's killers. She has a mother here now that you destroyed. The betrayal is compounded by what appears to be a motive rooted in jealousy. She was such a bright young lady, outgoing and very independent. A lot of that was jealousy, Brown explained. She had her mind right. Melanie had recently graduated and was working at an assisted living home for elderly people. She was building a life for herself and her children. She was moving forward, and according to her mother, this progress, this independence and brightness, may have sparked resentment in those around her who weren't on the same path. The case of Melanie Massay forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. It reminds us that sometimes the greatest danger isn't from strangers, but from those we've welcomed into our lives. It underscores the wisdom in Chautauqua Brown's advice. Before you let them even in your presence, it's time to interview people now. And it's sad that it's gotten that way. In a world where 7 friends can allegedly conspire to ambush a pregnant woman, Brown's caution isn't paranoia. It's painful wisdom born from unimaginable loss. Nearly a year passed before the first arrests were made in Melanie Massay's murder case. In January 2024, the Lakewood Police Department issued warrants for 7 people in connection with the killing, each wanted for first-degree murder. The arrests didn't happen simultaneously but unfolded over a period of months, with some suspects remaining at large for an extended time. By January 2024, 5 of the 7 suspects had been apprehended and were being held in the Jefferson County Jail. Monty Hayes, 23, Rhea Asia Hollins, 20, Trinity Walker, 18, Dejana Abrams, 22. Each faced serious charges including first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, first-degree assault, and violent crime sentence enhancers. The 6th suspect, Jalea Burks, 19, surrendered to police in March 2024, more than a year after Melanie's murder. But Isaac Peary, 23, the final suspect, remained elusive. For Chautauqua Brown, this meant living with the knowledge that one of her daughter's alleged killers was still free. I am so glad that these 5 people are in jail, Brown said in February 2024, when 2 suspects were still at large. You guys think you're gonna hide, but you're not. Isaac and Jalea, you will be found. I fear no man. I don't fear their little pow-pows. I fear no man because that's all they can do is shoot.
I fear no man. I fear no man. I don't fear their little pow-pows. I fear no man because that's all they can do is shoot.
Her words proved prophetic. On March 5, 2025, more than 2 years after Melanie's murder, Isaac Perry was finally arrested in Aurora, Colorado. With his capture, all 7 suspects were in custody, facing justice for their alleged roles in the ambush killing. Inside the Jefferson County Courthouse, the legal proceedings have moved forward at the deliberate pace, characteristic of the American justice system. The courtroom presents a stark contrast to the chaotic violence of February 28, 2023. Here, under the watchful eye of the law, each action is measured, each word weighed, each decision documented. By October 2024, 4 of the 7 defendants had chosen to plead guilty rather than face trial. Reasia Hollins pleaded guilty to second-degree murder with a violent crime sentence enhancer, while other charges including first-degree murder were dismissed. Her sentencing was scheduled for May 1, 2025. Dejana Abrams pleaded guilty to second-degree assault, with her sentencing set for August 4, 2025. Jayla Taylor pleaded guilty to second-degree assault and tampering with physical evidence, with her next court hearing scheduled for April 28, 2025. Trinity Walker pleaded guilty to second-degree assault, with sentencing scheduled for August 4, 2025. The remaining 3 defendants, Monty Hayes, Jalea Burks, and Isaac Perry, pleaded not guilty and were awaiting trial. Hayes' trial was scheduled to begin July 7, 2025, while Burks's trial was set for August 11, 2025. Perry, the last to be apprehended, had his next court hearing scheduled for March 31, 2025. For Chatika Brown and Melanie's young daughter, the legal proceedings represent both a path to justice and a prolonged reopening of wounds. Each court appearance means reliving the horror of what happened on Zephyr Street. Each delay extends the already lengthy wait for resolution. "You guys destroyed my family," Brown said, addressing her daughter's killers. "I won't hear that in the physical realm." "Hi, Mommy." "I won't get that because of what they did." The legal system moves methodically toward justice, but for those who loved Melanie, no verdict can fill the void left by her absence. No sentence can bring back the young mother and her unborn twins. No courtroom proceeding can erase the image of Melanie being brought out in a body bag, as her mother painfully recalled. As the cases progress through the courts, the family continues their vigil for justice, a justice delayed by more than 2 years of investigation, arrests, and legal proceedings. For them, each guilty plea and each trial date represents another step in a journey they never chose to take, a journey toward a justice that, while necessary, can never be complete. In the wake of violence, those left behind must somehow find ways to continue living while honoring those they've lost. For Chatika Brown, honoring her daughter Melanie Massay meant creating a memorial filled with flowers and a pink heart at the site where her daughter's life was taken. The memorial on Zephyr Street stands as a physical reminder of Melanie's life and the lives of her unborn twins. It marks a space transformed by tragedy, where once there was simply a residential street, there is now hallowed ground. Brown can still see blood drops from my child being slain at the site, a visceral reminder of the violence that occurred there. Beyond the physical memorial, Brown carries her daughter's ashes with her, ensuring that Melanie remains close even in death. This act of keeping her daughter near speaks to the depth of a mother's love that transcends even the finality of death. The ripples of Melanie's murder have spread throughout the Lakewood community. The makeshift memorial has become a gathering place for those who knew Melanie and those moved by her story. Community members have left flowers, notes, and other tokens of remembrance, demonstrating how one life and one death can touch many others. Behind all the pain and heartache, Brown has found a renewed strength, reported one local news outlet. This strength has transformed a private woman into a public advocate for justice. The murder of Melanie Massay highlights several critical lessons about violence prevention that could potentially save lives. Perhaps most alarming is the vulnerability of pregnant women to violence. Research has shown that homicide is a lead cause of death among pregnant women in the United States. a statistic as shocking as it is heartbreaking. Melanie's case tragically reinforces this reality. She was 4 months pregnant with twins when she was ambushed and killed. One of the most important takeaways from this case is the critical importance of taking threats seriously. The day before her murder, Melanie documented her fears in text messages, writing, "I'm so scared. I feel like I'm going to die." There had been a Facebook dispute where threats were made against her. These warning signs preceded the violence, creating a window where intervention might have been possible. Chautauqua Brown, through her grief, offers wisdom that could protect others. Before you let them even in your presence, it's time to interview people now, and it's sad that it's gotten that way. This advice, to be cautious about who we allow into our lives, comes from a mother who watched her daughter extend kindness to people who ultimately betrayed her in the most violent way imaginable. For those facing threats or feeling unsafe, resources are available. Local police departments can help assess threats and provide guidance. Organizations like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-723, offer 24/7 support. Many communities have victim advocates who can help navigate safety planning and legal protections. The critical first step is reaching out rather than facing danger alone. What warning signs of potential violence have you observed in your own life or community? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this information valuable, please subscribe to Shadows of Crime for more content that could help protect you and your loved ones. Melanie Massay was just 21 years old, a mother to a 3-year-old daughter, pregnant with twins, working at an assisted living facility, and by all accounts, a young woman with her mind right. Her life was characterized by kindness and generosity. She gave shelter to someone who was homeless, shared meals with friends, and as her mother described, was a sweethearted person who would give the shirt off her back. The legal proceedings against the 7 people accused in her murder continue to unfold. 4 have pleaded guilty to various charges, while 3 await trial. For Chautauqua Brown and Melanie's young daughter, the pursuit of justice is ongoing. A process that can never truly compensate for their loss, but may provide some measure of closure. Through her grief, Brown has emerged as a powerful voice transforming personal tragedy into public advocacy. Her words resonate with both pain and resilience. "You may have shot her, you may have pierced my daughter's flesh, but you did not take her endless love." This statement captures the essence of what remains after violence. Love that transcends physical existence. Melanie's love lives on in her daughter, in her mother's advocacy, in the pink memorial on Zephyr Street, and now in the awareness her story brings to issues of violence prevention. The tragedy of Melanie Massay reminds us of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of violence. It challenges us to be more vigilant about the warning signs of potential harm, more careful about who we trust, and more proactive in seeking help when threats arise. Most importantly, it reminds us that behind every crime statistic is a human being, someone who was loved, who had dreams, who mattered. Thank you for joining us on Shadows of Crime. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing and sharing this video to spread awareness. Remember, in sharing these stories, our goal is not just to document tragedy, but to prevent it. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.